attention that is of utmost interest after we get the body straightened up and feeling as comfortable as it can be. For some people, that's a bit of a tall order, but we look for some kind of equilibrium, hopefully with the spine relatively alert, not necessarily stiff and erect, but just in an alert posture, as if you were maybe sitting on a piano stool and practicing scales or something. So for people who have meditated, some of you I know for many years, many decades even, then it takes very little encouragement or context to begin to feel something establishing in the heart and mind. And for people for whom the practice is relatively new, then we have a kind of novelty. Something is novel, is new, perhaps. Here at the Quaker House, I can say that obviously some people might have just stepped in off of the street and have no or little exposure to meditation. And for anyone, newcomers, beginners, or seemingly old hands, it's good to bear in mind that old, I'm sure many of you have seen the old book now, it's quite old, by Shunryu Suzuki, Beginner's Mind. Because no matter how long you've been meditating, still, this is the first time you've meditated right now, right here. It's it's perhaps a tired idea sometimes when we think about the here and now, and yet it's as relevant as it ever was. It's as pertinent as it ever was. And having the kind of humility to realize, yeah, you know what? I've never done this right here, right now, is a good way to begin. So much emphasis is placed in meditation on getting your legs and knees and your spine just right, and so on and so forth, and what's the altitude or the angle of your neck and your head and so forth. But letting the heart fall, settle in some situation, some gracious kind of way that allows for a sense of gratitude, appreciation, humility, and some kind of willingness to be present, an interest in the present. So there may be many subtle aspects to meditation practice and various forms of technique that you hear about. But this kind of simple approach to beginning is never wrong, is always right. For one thing, it dislodges the common attitude that we bring to meditation, or in fact to anything that we are learning or think we already know, which is we want to do it right. We want to do it a little better than the last time. Maybe that experience that we've been reaching for all this time is a little closer to our grasp, and maybe we can find it in our warm grasp this very day. We, in other words, very often bring desire and grasping to our attention, and it derails certainly obtrudes on the more subtle, heartfelt qualities that are actually of very great benefit in meditation practice. So with that, just allow the attention to slowly drift, beginning maybe with the head, feeling the face, all of those muscles in the face, which hold our social being, and therefore which often contain levels of tension that we don't always recognize. So just allowing the attention to move from one part of the body to the next. And any source of tension you see, allow it to soften, relax, let go. Being sure to breathe in easily a few times just to establish a sense of that possibility. Not holding on, not reaching for something, straining for something, not trying to be better. But just falling into the lap of the moment. So in this way, just allow this sense of presence to continue as best you can. And if and when, certainly when the mind begins to drift, am I doing it right? Or remembering something you didn't do, or remembering something you'll do after this is all over, thinking of a question you can ask, whatever comes to mind, as best you can, just observe it. There you are. Just notice what it is and then set it aside. Let it go. Soften around it. And we'll just continue in this way for the next few minutes.
Brahmachaloka Dipati Sahampati Katanjalihana Divaraya Chata Santi Dasata Paraja Kajatika te setu Dhamma anukampi mam pajam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. The little formality, the little ritual that preceded what I'm about to say is a very ancient one. It's handed down in the tradition that after the Buddha had achieved his final awakening under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, he contemplated not teaching. He realized that what he had realized was in fact so extraordinarily subtle that it would be extremely difficult to convey its truth to people, and so that this little ritual represents is a high deva, a godly figure, an angelic figure, we could say, descending from his high heavens and asking the Buddha out of compassion for those with little dust in their eyes to teach. And at that, the Buddha consented. And it's very easy to take any ritual for granted, and even in a culture such as ours, to maybe even demean it a little bit because it's just something really old that we do. We don't know why we do it. Has no particular. We always do it at the beginning. Some of you might have heard of there's a Zen story about this temple. They every morning they have their meditation, and there's a cat, and it gets in the way of the abbot lighting the candles. And finally, the old abbot said, we just got to tie the cat up, before our pujas, because it's just distracting. So they do. And time goes on, and they continue that. And, finally, the old abbot dies, and finally the cat dies too. They have to get another cat to tie it up. So there has to be a cat to tie up before he can do it. So that is sometimes the way we kind of clever Westerners view rituals. But on the other hand, sometimes, as is the case in this one, there's very, very profound meaning behind it, and it's useful sometimes to bring this meaning to mind. It's there are a lot of good reasons for Westerners to have avenues and approaches to humility, because we, after all, are the pinnacle of time as we know it. We're the most advanced people. We're the most economically prosperous people. We have all of these sophisticated political ideologies. We developed these, through our brain power. And now we're working with AI, and we're manipulating genes, and we're doing all kinds of things no one else could ever have ever done. And we're really it. Yeah. And yet, we haven't got the simplest things figured out, really, have we? And it's these perennial questions that religious geniuses, whoever they might be for you, have grappled with, but have grappled with also sufficient humility and insight. And there have always been, I would say, there have always been wise people in the world, people with a particular kind of reflection and intelligence, that they see much more deeply into the human heart and mind than is commonly done. And I often think of the praise we give to Olympic athletes. We just had the Olympics, and isn't it amazing that everybody here has jogged around a track or around the block or kicked a ball or something, and yet the people that we praise so much, that we see doing these extraordinary things, I mean, they are leaps and bounds not only over what we ever did, but what we probably could ever have done. So if you take this as a kind of truth that there is a possibility that through training, through extraordinary training, but also in this case, maybe probably through genetic endowment and many other things, it's possible to reach limits that very, very few people do. Now, just expand that a little bit. It's a thought experiment, you know. Imagine that in this general equation, it's also possible that some people are, whether you say born with or are born into this life, among many, with this kind of endowment from their own karmic past, perhaps. But if you allow for the fact that, yeah, some people are like Olympic athletes, Olympic gold medalists, only in terms of wisdom, in terms of that capacity to see in so deeply into the human heart, into human motivations. It's worthy of contemplation from time to time because, as I say, it's I think an excellent exercise for any of us clever Westerners and clever modern folk to be able to develop some humility from time to time. Humility and gratitude, samtuti katanyuta. These are a couple of the qualities. Some of you will recognize that phrase from the Mangala Sutta. These are two of the highest blessings: appreciation, gratitude, and humility. So these things don't age. We don't get tired of these things. You get tired of almost anything else that we acquire in the world, but things like humility and gratitude, compassion, things like this are always worthy of contemplation with and sitting with in the right frame of mind with some appreciation and willingness to learn. Yeah. So what was I going to? I was going to talk about something altogether different, but there you go. I got started on that. Oh, and if you ever really want to be humble, just think, yeah, say we keep progressing in this way. I'm talking technologically, and that for another 3 or 4 centuries, how will they look at us? It's kind of amusing. I mean, it's the simplest kind of thing, but why not? Just quite rational, really. So, well, I mean, I think most of the people here have some background in Buddhism, so look at that. I've already taken 10 minutes and hardly got started on what I thought I would talk about. We all know that there are little terms that sort of nest together. There are ideas, there are elements of Buddhist teaching which nest together very nicely. Greed, hatred, and delusion, it's one thing we look at. The Four Noble Truths and the 3 characteristics of existence and things like this. It's helpful to have little groupings of teaching sometimes just to reflect on, to carry around with you for a little while. And I'm starting to get reminded of how often I talk about fridge magnets, but little terms once in a while to just put on your fridge to remind yourself of some core teaching, which actually brings an element of insight, which probably would not have been part of your day had you not spent a moment in the morning with your cereal and reflecting again on these 3 characteristics of existence, for instance. So that's where fridge magnets come into my whole teaching over. So there's a lovely set of teachings, and I actually was reflecting on them a couple of weeks ago with another group, and they continue to kind of move around and morph into different ways, but they are called the what are they called, the basis of the basis of meritorious action, the bases of more meritorious action. And they begin with three terms that many of you, and I really, because this is the first time I've been here, I don't feel like I know too many of you at all well. But many of you will have heard of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. What appears in this list actually is Dana, Sila, Bhavana, which means generosity. So that ability to just give of oneself, one's energies, one's time, kind words, things like that. Sometimes money, sometimes this or that, but just there's something that you have that can be offered to another, and it is a benefit. This other person, this other group, this cat, this dog, whatever. So generosity. Even before a person is particularly virtuous, even before maybe they have set upon themselves a life that holds virtue with some respect, people can still recognize the value of generosity. So you'll have, a couple of well-known scoundrels, I think, in human history, who, after they die, it turns out that they donated all of their kind of oddly earned earnings to an orphanage or something of this kind. So this does happen. Mafia dons are famous for trying to buy this or buy that, but trying to bring some benefit to a group of orphans or homeless mothers or something like this. Can happen. So generosity is one of these great things. These are the suttas, by the way, these first three. So dana, sila, virtue. It's clear to anyone who is at all interested in cultivating a path of meditation that the quality of their actions, of their intentions, of the body, the actions of body, speech, and mind, that these things have a great deal of importance, a great deal of relevance to the capacity of the mind to settle. If you just had an argument with your spouse, and then, it's time to meditate, and you pop upstairs, and you might be sitting with that for that meditation period and the rest of the evening too, by the way. So virtue it's a foundation which cannot be ignored in spiritual life. Our capacity for and the fact that we are working with things such as honesty and harmlessness and kindness and all of these things, and generosity. But just being harmless and honest and kind and loyal in our intimate relations, for instance, all of these things have a great deal of bearing. They have genuine relevance in any kind of spiritual practice, not just in meditation, properly sitting on proper meditation stool and watching your breath, but any form, any conception of spiritual development, possibility for spiritual growth, will have as a basis virtue, working the virtue. And the interesting thing is, the better we get at it, the more clear it is that it's important, and the more clear it is, the more clear its importance is to us, the better it becomes too. This is where growing wisdom feeds back into virtue, for instance. I think we've all probably experienced this from time to time. Certainly, if you just look over your life, how virtuous were you when you were 9 or 12? You know, we're all fairly selfish creatures at certain ages, 3. Yeah. But we learn from, we get corrected, of course, by good parenting and good friends, teachers. And we also become observant too. We want to avoid making mistakes so we don't have to get corrected so much, whatever. And then perhaps if we're lucky, if we work with it, we develop a taste for virtue. And we find its beauty. Truth, beauty, goodness, yeah. Goes right back to Socrates, Plato. I mean, these are just such beautiful foundations of Western thought. Truth, beauty, and goodness. So you find the beauty in goodness and its truthfulness. You find the goodness in beauty, truth. You find the truth and so forth. And then Bhavana. So remember, where are we now? We're Dhamma, Sila, Bhavana. Bhavana is development, so usually understood as meditative development, mental culture, development of the heart. You can look at it in various ways, but Bhavana means something like development. Because things get better as we give it attention, the right kind of attention. Soft, gentle, but also there is a kind of rigor to it. There is a kind of clarity. Some things ought not to be done, truly not to be done. You have to be clear about that. And then you have to be clear in terms of your own reflection on what allows for this development to flourish, to develop. And that will be something like humility and kindness, gratitude, honesty, and all of these other things. You can make long lists of beautiful qualities, and they all kind of intermesh. They have this what is this? This fractal geometry. This kind of they have this quality of all belonging together, because in a sense, probably to the truly wise, there is only one thing. In fact, a very great meditation master in Thailand was heard to say once. He gave a talk on some of these things, but he was in my estimation, a truly wise being. I guess he concluded a Dhamma talk by saying something like, "Yeah, the world always comes in pairs, but the Dhamma is one all the way through." And I think that insight is he didn't study physics in university. He might have had a grade 3 education. He might not have been to school. So Dhamma, Sila, Bhavana. These are three foundations for meritorious action. So those come out of the suttas, and the other things, if we get to them, will come out of commentarial literature. And I won't necessarily go in any particular order, but there are 7 more. They make quality. They make 10, one for each finger. How's that? I know a lot of your fridges are probably so. So now he's scouring his memory for the next good one to look at. One is transference of merit. This is an interesting one, and maybe a bit of a challenge or a novel one for the Western mind. In the East, this is just Buddhism 101, really. What do you do in your mother, your father's past, etc.? What do you do when you think, well, you know, I've had many lives, and there may be some lives when I've been kind of naughty, and there might be some beings that I hurt. Is there any way, isn't that a lovely impulse? Is there any way I could bring some benefit to beings that I may have hurt in a previous life? Well, I could make merit, and I could dedicate it to them in my mind. And we, of course, in this culture, we plant trees for spouses who have passed on, and mothers who've gone and so forth. We plant a tree or have a lovely park bench made. And that's a very lovely gesture, actually. Comes out of many things, memory, nostalgia maybe, but also generosity and maybe an intuition that it has some benefit, right? Might not, you might never know, but it might, just might. Isn't that nice? So sharing merit, the generation of merit for others, and not necessarily beings with whom you have any kind of physical contact, but just who are here in some sense in this dimension, or maybe who we may never see and never see again. I've been thinking a lot about this because we all have heard, I'm sure, of illnesses for which no doctor can find a cure. In fact, they can't even find out what's wrong with a person. They run all the tests, yeah. And then some wise guy is going to say, yeah, it's in their mind. Okay, it's really smart. So what do we do about that? You know? Now, in Buddhist cosmology, they would say, yeah, that could actually be true. And perhaps there is in fact a causal agency at work that we can't see. Perhaps there's some sort of impediment that is invisible to us, but which might be softened, which might be ameliorated through this good, generous intention. And then it's up to a person, I think, to some degree, to maybe articulate the proper intention that they're doing. So maybe they meditate for several days, or they do a long round of chanting. And you know how having a good giving yourself to something like meditation, but some sort of wholesome activity, or chanting if that's something which you enjoy and can feel a benefit of, but doing something of benefit. And then feeling what that benefit is. The Buddha says, merit is another word for happiness. So there's some kind, let's say, of subtle, gentle happiness. You might call it a kind of satisfaction, but there's a beauty to it. Yeah. So when you can do something, when there's something in your life that you can do, some act of generosity, some spiritual practice, what have you, but do it with the intention to share that with others. And in the case that I'm mentioning, perhaps, my aunt is ill, and the doctors don't know what it is. May the merit of my practice right here, right now, be of benefit to whatever causal factors may be involved in my aunt's suffering, just as an idea. So the sharing of merit, it's a lovely thing to contemplate and to put into practice. Rejoicing in the merits of others. So this is also a type of generosity, a type of mindfulness. We're so self-absorbed, aren't we? As I said, when we began the meditation, where so much of what we do in life is governed by, guided by, motivated by this sense of not quite being enough. There's something that I wanted to achieve, wanted to have that I don't have. Why is that? It's because I'm not good enough. Maybe I've done something wrong. I don't know what it. We aren't quite enough. This moment isn't quite enough. Ajahn Chah once said, he observed to his monks, all these years of being abbot here, never met a wealthy person. That's strange. And then some of these monks say, but Lampo, you've had some pretty wealthy people coming up from Bangkok, You've got the low soul and you've got the so-so, but you've got the high soul too. And isn't that true? He said, yeah. Everybody who's come to Wapapan, they've never had enough. Yeah. So rejoicing in the merit of others is letting go of that and actually, yeah, here I am with other people, and my neighbor, he's a bit of a grump, isn't he? But gee, yeah, he's got these 3 dogs and he just loves them to bit. And he always seems to get these stray dogs out of the pound or something. And, that takes a certain kind of sweetness and lovability. Isn't that nice? Or he's, he always tips the paper girl really generously because obviously he really appreciates that she comes from a kind of troubled family. He sees something in her and he's just sort of passing along something. Isn't that nice, I mean, you know what I mean. You work in busy workplaces, or you're driving on a bus or whatever you do in your lives in Ottawa or wherever you are. Maybe even Melbourne. I can't remember. I don't see your. You can ask, what is it about the people around me? There may be something of real nobility, of real merit, and doesn't it feel good to rejoice in that, to appreciate it, to recognize it, and then to appreciate it. So this is a basis of meritorious action. Wonderful. Well, there's giving Dhamma talks. So there's teaching Dhamma. This is one. And as monks, one of the reasons that there was this formal question prior to my beginning is, as monks we're told not to. Basically, we don't proselytize, and if people are interested and ask, we can share what we know, what we feel we know, the best way we can. But we don't go around and try to correct people all the time. That would be so tiresome. But offering Dhamma reflection is very, very good. In monasteries, it's almost a kind of it's to be done with care too. It's to be done with care too. There's a time and a place, and all kinds of subtle aspects to the interhuman relations, which come into this. But certainly, teaching Dhamma is very valuable, to the point that Ajahn Pavaro once asked Lumpur Liam, the head of Wapapong, the chosen successor of Ajahn Chah. He wants to ask Lumpur Liam, what is the merit? So, say Lumpur Liam gives a talk in Thai. What is the merit of someone translating your talk into English and then giving it? He said, it's the same as if they had given it. Mm-hmm. Maybe there are qualifiers to that, so long as they're, they have their heart in it too, and whatever. But isn't that interesting? The other one is listening to Dhamma. Listening to Dhamma is also a source of meritorious action. Listening to something as a matter of vital concern. So it isn't just listening, but it's giving ear. It's listening with one's heart. None of you have taken notes. I'm happy with that. But it isn't a kind of Western approach that we're taking down every. It's just something in this half an hour or hour talk or something. I hope that there's something that reaches me, and then I'll use that. I'll honor it and I'll use it as best I can. It's a little bit like that. So just listening with bended ear, listening with sincere attention. So listening to Dhamma is another one of these things. Another one, which I love very much, is reverence. Some of you, well, I don't know, some of us are kind of elderly, I guess, but or some of you are just well read. Albert Schweitzer, a Nobel Prize winner, a long time ago, also a very good organist, by the way. He used to tour playing Bach in Europe to raise funds for orphanage or medical doctor. Quite a guy. He coined the term, I guess, reverence for life. Reverence for life. It's a very good start. Without life, none of us would have any opportunity to develop spiritually, to become wise, perhaps, to become really good companions, to become helpful to one another, to become sources of benefit and merit to ourselves and others. Without life, it's just so basic. It's one of the reasons that Buddhism is always stressing that we honor parents. One of the reasons, one of the many. Anyway, reverence for Dhamma, reverence for life, reverence for teachers who offer, and I think of some of the great teachers that I've had in life. The last one I'll come to right now is, it's a neat one. It's, what is it, Polly? It's Dityu Jukamma. Dityu Jukamma. You might remember Ujjapatipanno. So to practice straightly or correctly. So Dityu Jukamma is straightening one's view. And that's one way of looking at the whole reason that we come and listen to Dhamma, that we open up books and study Dhamma, that we discuss Dhamma with some care. The reason I said that it's a little bit careful around monasteries is that Dhamma discussion can be very beautiful and very uplifting and beneficial. It can also be a source of contention. I don't think that's quite the way it works. Or my teacher says this. What does your teacher say again? And actually, it just leads to human conflict, which it could be about sports teams, about the best kind of card, and it could be anything. In this case, it's about Dhamma. But when it infiltrates the realm of Dhamma, it's especially galling and inappropriate. So there is considerable care that needs to be taken in that case. But straightening one's view then comes from studying a kind of a life of reflection. Like whether you live in an office, a apartment tower, or whether you're blessed as I am to live in a forest monastery, it comes from taking life seriously with joy, you might say, and bringing your living attention to it, the attention that comes from the very life itself. In doing so, just as I mentioned a while ago, we're always refining this quality of virtue that we're upholding. It's one of these characteristics that I mentioned earlier. Everything is being refined and clarified in this way. We'll make mistakes, yeah, but if we have this kind of open attention and we bring interest, Latin, interessa, being in the middle. Yeah, you're in the middle of experience. You're right there. Yeah, that's mindfulness, you could say. So you bring a kind of light and joyful and careful attention to this matter we call life. It will become more and more clarified. And of course, we have Dhamma in a formal sense to rely on too. But ultimately, we all need to develop a sense of reflection, of looking at ourselves. There's no formula in the end of it that's going to get us enlightened. It's our own kind of effort that will get there. And part of that effort is just the quality of attention we bring to the very stuff of life. So I will leave these reflections with that, with my best wishes. And there's opportunity for questions if you have any. We go to 9, is that right? Or? Yes.
It's 9 and 9:50.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm quite happy with going. I don't have anywhere to go. Back to my niece and her husband's house and whatever happens there. Susan.
Hi.
Hi, Susan.
A question. I think it's about generosity.
Hey.
So I visit Bill. I was visiting him every day, and I'm not anymore. He's having trouble putting things together, and I know he would like me there more. but I get really tired. And I actually sometimes I notice I'm cranky, and I normally don't get cranky unless I'm hungry. So how do I work with that? I mean, I feel bad when I'm not there every day, but I
Well,
wore out.
well, you can work with feeling bad that you're not there, and give yourself the same sort of attitude that I was recommending that we begin meditation with. That would be a way to start. In other words, I mean, one way of looking at generosity here is being generous to yourself first. You have to recognize your own capacity. You're not, none of us are spring chickens, right, Susan? We have the the modulations of energy and all this that carry on. We have to be honest and observant of that. There's no gold standard of visiting one's spouse who is ailing in this, that, or another manner. How many times a week? How many times a day? How long I spend each day. There can be no gold standard, and he will also have to live with the result of that, whatever his capacity is to reflect and so forth. This is his bodily karma working out too. That is the way it is. But if you begin with a kind of generous heart towards yourself, there's no question of your feeling of commitment and love towards him. That isn't in jeopardy here. It's just being careful about your own resources. And then there will be times when you've given yourself that break and that ease, and it will enable you to really be present and in a way which you appreciate and he appreciates. But it's just a practice. It's a spiritual practice like anything else. I mean, you lived in this world of our practice for many decades. So just think about kind of folding it into the language of Dhamma that you've heard from the best of your teachers, from Anagarika. What would she tell you? Yes, Susan, you're not doing enough. I doubt very much. Yeah, right? Yeah. So do what you can. Yeah, do what you can. And be honest with what you can.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Brings it all together. Thank you.
Yeah. There's Reed. So if the people on screen don't ask a question, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the people in this room. Yes. Will they be able to hear you?
Oh, yes. I'm having some difficulty with this. And when it's going I think it's going in a positive direction, I really feel quite encouraged, convinced myself that I'm being patient. But when it's going in the opposite direction, which it seems to do quite frequently, I'm getting very disappointed. And my patience, there's about patience. So, I'm aware of that. I'm trying to, I just wonder if you have any.
When are you aware of it?
Sorry?
When are you aware of it?
Well, I'm aware of those changing sort of moods about. But I'm just wondering about ways to sort of work with it skillfully.
Well, I don't know a lot about needs, so I can't give you advice on needs. But I know it's not what you're asking. Even though I've had meniscus issues too, but they were mine, and they're not yours. You might have heard that the first noble truth is
Very suffering.
things are unsatisfactory, that there's this kind of inevitability, but that it has a cause. And the cause of suffering, satisfactoriness is desire, wanting things to be otherwise. Yeah. I know I'm being a little bit facetious, but the challenge any of us has, because we know it all. Most of us here probably have heard this 1,000, 10,000 times. But the challenge we have is to make it real. And the only way I know how to do that, one way of describing it at least, because it is a fractal universe, right? You can start anywhere and you can still get to truth. So right now you've got a bad need. You can start there and find the truth in it. But the truth won't come out of it by wanting something different. Simple, yeah. It's simple. It's simple, and yet there's a hurdle. There's something in the way here. Something in the way here. So when mindfulness, and this is why we practice and give our attention to the matter of attention, to what it is to be alert to the moment. When mindfulness is really quite strong, is robust, actually, we see things quickly and clearly for what they are. And that's why for Lumpur Samedo, it makes perfect sense to say, it's like this. But you get used to something like that, oh, it's like this. That it still ticks me off. It's like this. Being ticked off is, it's just another kind of thing. If we allow it to become routinized, right? If it becomes routine. But somehow we have to begin with beginner's mind again. That's all. Because you don't know everything. You don't know very much at all. And I'm applying this to everybody, of course. We don't know anything until we get that. And we could have read every encyclopedia on Buddhism going, but we don't know a darn thing until we realize in this moment, it's like this. Because seeing it in the moment as it is changes it. It doesn't have a choice. Because as Anagarika Dhammadina, who Susan and I kind of grew up studying under, she said, nothing can withstand being reduced to a verb, or reduced to the thing that it is. Yeah, irritation is like this. Wanting it to be otherwise is just like this. At some point, that's when we get that. And otherwise, we're just theorizing, or it's after the fact. Oh, right, yeah, it's when I was having that. I was in my doldrums there. Yeah, it's because there's anxiety, and I can, we're okay. Well, it's cheaper than hiring a psychoanalyst, certainly. Yeah, but it doesn't quite get to the nub, and it's something about the precious quality and the beginning is unique. Every beginning is unique. It's what it is. Yeah, and it's a very subtle thing because it just went. Now it's a new beginning. It's very, very subtle. You have to be a poet or something to really get these things, or a nuclear physicist or something to sometimes understand these things. But something about humility there, because we start blaming ourselves, or maybe we blame the Dhamma. Yeah, I was a Buddhist for quite a while, but then I had this problem, and I didn't help it, didn't do a darn thing, that'll happen, right? I tried that. But That's because almost nobody can do what any child understands in a moment, you know. Yeah, it's like that, and we can't. It doesn't help to beat ourselves up about that either. But that's why, in a way, that's why I've been giving you what probably is for many of you a kind of new list tonight, because sometimes it helps to just broaden the palette. There's a type of violet I hadn't. Oh, that's kind of nice. You know, I'll add this and that. It's a little bit like that. Just giving some new ideas to freshen the bouquet, you might say. Yeah. Yeah. So you know, well done. You're working with it. Well done for noticing it and seeing. Yeah, there is irritation. There's expectation. There's wanting it to be otherwise. Yeah, that's what's occurring. That's for sure. Now, will seeing it in the moment, wanting it, you know, it's unsatisfactory. Will seeing it like that heal the need? Well, no, but it will make of the need a different experience in that moment. And as we do that, you know, in whatever, you know, however this gets applied in your own lives, as we do this from day to day to day, we're straightening our view. And, you know, that's the work of a lifetime. That is the work of a lifetime. And how precious and grateful we ought to be to have this as the stuff of a lifetime. It isn't anymore, yeah, I'm going to make that first. I mean, there's a wonderful family who came to Anandagiri, but I was in Thailand for years. And, you know, Indian fellow, very handsome, married to a very beautiful Thai woman. They had two lovely young boys at the time, maybe 14 and 12 or something, bright kids and beautiful family. What did this guy want to do? He wanted to become a billionaire, not a millionaire. Oh, millionaire, that's last year's, you know, ambition. He wanted to be a billionaire because it would be so cool that, because he's been on some of these yachts, you know, some of the people who use yachts. Holy, yeah. Holy. What a world of suffering that's going to probably entail. And what happens if he does it? Yeah, how's the marriage? How's that going? Kids still fine. So we're so fortunate to have this particular thing to work on and to struggle with, you know, and to kind of, dang, thought I understood, and now, you know, but that's the way it is. It's the way it is. You know, I'm sure you've heard me say this before, but I mean, the simplest things are what stick with me, basically. So, you know, this word kamatan, right? So kamatan is a place of effort, a place of action, literally, a place of action, kamatan. So in the forest tradition, quite often we're called kamatan monks because, oh, you know, this monk walks 10 hours a day on the jungle path. And this one, you know, spent 5 years working with the body parts, or very, you know, so a lot of subjects that can be focused on in meditation practice, a lot of them. So Lumpur Samedo, bless him, is once asked at Manachat by some, you know, keen young monk looking for, you know, Lumpur, what's your kamatan? And he says, my kamatan, life is my kamatan. I mean, I've never found a way of improving that. It's very, very sweet. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I hope nothing I said sounded at all kind of mocking, but just teasing a little bit, because we've all been there, and we'll probably all be there again. You know? I'm just getting over a year-long bout of shingles, you know, and you know, so.
Ajahn.
Yes, that's who? Who is that?
It's Inga.
Inga.
I'm having some trouble with my Audible tonight, hearing you as well as I desperately want to. So I missed what you just said. Ajahn Sumaido's answer was.
Oh, okay. So the question. So you understood what a kamatan is?
Would you mind repeating that? I really am. There's some problem with audio tonight.
That's okay. That's okay. So kamatan literally means a place of action. And what it refers to in our tradition in Buddhism is a kind of focus of meditation. Some people will, maybe they'll be working with metta, they'll be working with the Brahma Viharas, yeah? So that becomes their kamatan. Or someone will give a special interest to working with the rising and falling of the breath, say. Or in cases of monastics, sometimes a monk will spend, they might work, they might walk on the walking path for 10, 15 hours a day, some of them. So that's their kamatan, yeah?
Okay.
So a young monk learning, eager to learn and not what Nanachat asks Ajahn Sumedho when he's the abbot there, Ajahn, what's your kamatan? Because they're always talking about kamatans and
Yeah.
it's training monastery, right? He says, what's your kamatan? Ajahn Sumedho. And Ajahn Sumedho looks at him and he says, my kamatan? Life is my kamatan.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Yes, ma'am. Oh, just, yes?
So I guess I have a question about aging gracefully. I've had a lot of opportunity to learn alongside various experiences of people close to me in terms of old age, sickness, and death. And I notice as I'm older, past 60, that my body doesn't hold up as well as it once did. I've got a bad hip and arthritis in my wrists and hands, and so I have a lot of, and I've been practicing for quite a while, so I have a lot of understanding of the processes and the experiences of being a companion to people who've gone through many difficulties. And I still notice, for instance, I've had two people, one in their 80s and one in their 90s, who went into steep decline fairly rapidly, and died this year. And I feel fearful that I will go there. And I know I will, of course, but I still, and having had a lot of experience with it, I still feel fearful or resistant that this will happen to me. So,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
how do we work with that?
Yeah. How much of your life has been, in your estimation, in control so far?
Well, I could answer that a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a way that, with my profession,
Sure.
with how I guide students, there's a lot of control.
Seems to be, yeah.
There seems to be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good reflection, and I think, we all would share an appreciation of that, especially in your case, if you've seen the kind of what the actual living experience is of a very, very steep and rapid decline. Yeah, that must be something to behold. Another thing to keep us humble. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are so many ways of declining, and I suppose so many forms that, let's say, dementia or Parkinson's, or I don't have a lexicon for all of the human. I remember one time, just as a kind of practice, a little kamatan for an evening maybe, I was trying to think of all of the forms of cancer that we could have. And I'd never heard of hair follicle cancer, but I can just about think of everything else, everything can go really bad. And but also say, if I understand you correctly, it might be in particular the mind, the kind of erosion, the corrosion, the whatever that can happen with the mind. I'm not altogether sure what the experiencer of that. So we have, as observers, we have something we're seeing. They can't speak, or they don't recognize people, or they're grueling or whatever it is. I'm not always sure what the experience of that is. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story of Lumpur Cha, of his final years. Yeah, very, very interesting in this case. And maybe it provides a bit of a standard because, I mean, in our tradition, he is reckoned to be, reputed to be, understood to be an arahant. So have finished his work, put down the burden, as you might say. And even when, so he had it seems that he had a stroke at a certain age, and then the decision was finally made for him to have an operation. That didn't go so well. Long story short, the last 10 years of his life, he spent in decline. And, first in a wheelchair, and finally he was sort of brought out in public, and monks would come to chant for him and things. But he spent a long time not even being able to teach verbally. Yeah. There's a very, very fine biography written by Ajahn Pavaro, who was just here in Ottawa, River City, just right here in River City, not that long ago, who wrote this book. It's, I think, about 800 pages. It's very beautifully written. And he writes very honestly and tenderly about these last years. Just as a footnote, it probably accounts, I would say, it probably accounts for, to some degree, of the cohesiveness of the Sangha, the monastic followers of Lumpur Cha, because they had to kind of get their act together as a group without a strong leader for about 10 years or 8 years or something like that. It's just an interesting footnote. Anyway, so in a case like that, where give an example, there was a period when he would just break into tears. Now this is a man who no one had seen crying out of sadness, because he looked squarely for a long time at life, just like that. He'd seen presumably everything that life could show him, and he wasn't prone to getting sad when a friend died. Not that he wasn't compassionate, not that he didn't have a great deal of wisdom to offer to friends and family, not at all. It isn't that he lost somehow the human touch and the human tenderness and that, but he saw very clearly the nature of this. So here's a monk of this caliber, let's say, and just kind of freaking out these poor young monks who are with him. All of a sudden he starts to laugh hilariously or just breaks down in tears, and what did you say something? Very, very disturbing and confusing. And he said at one point, don't pay any attention to this. It's just these moods aren't mine. They're just coming over me. I have no control over them. I have no control over them. So he was aware of it. Now I would think that kind of awareness would be quite rare. Similarly, there's a beautiful story. Beautiful story about later years when I don't think he was speaking anymore, and he received round the clock care from the monastic community. They had, if they were going to do that, they had to themselves put the feeding tube down their own throat, this is what it's like, and this is how careful you need to be, kind of thing. So they got their training. They were washing, and they were turning, they were massaging. He never got bed sores, and he was lying like that for a year, right? So this is quite a deal. Anyway, but at one point, maybe a group of monks, what is he still there? Is he, what's going on with Lumpur Cha's mind? We're going to keep looking after him, but is he kind of gone, or is his mind just sort of vacated or whatever? So they brought in, or there was a visiting, I think Lumpur Fan, I think was his name. And he's an Olympic gold medalist in meditation. Let's just say it's possible. And what comes with that, the kind of clarity of mind that comes with that, we'll leave it up to us to discover in our own time, this lifetime, another lifetime. But so he came in and sat with Lumpur Cha for an hour or something. So Lumpur Cha's laying there like this. And Lumpur Fan comes out after being with him for this period. He says, kind of like, don't worry about Lumpur Cha's mind. Lumpur Cha is like a full moon on a clear night. His mind is absolutely pure and it's bright. It's very precious thing, and what a thing to aspire to, just to feel the beauty of that and to think, a human being is capable of that, feeling appreciation and respect for something of that quality, that beauty. So that's one standard, okay, and of course, yeah. What I would say though is that somehow making life one's kamatan, whatever happens to you or me in my old age, as we lose control of our bladders or whatever it is, yeah, whatever happens to us, we'll be in much better shape if we continue doing what we're doing and treat life with the kind of respect it deserves. Because the mind will become more clear. It will become more able to hold more steadily whatever the changes that are becoming uncontrollable that are occurring. That's just the way it is. It's just the way the mind is. It'll be less likely to flinch every time something new happens, or to fall into fear, to fall into anger, to fall into resentment, to return to those old habits of mind where I was having that argument with my sister, and because it's the only thing that we feel secure about is some damned argument we had with our mother or our brother or something 40, 60 years ago. Instead, it will be more likely to attend to the moment and be present with what is and accept what is. Mm-hmm. It's like this. I just wet myself again, whatever it is. Yeah. Or I'm drooling. They told me I'm drooling again. I can't. What am I supposed to do about it? I can't help it. Whatever it is, yeah. So it's whatever our life in these bodies holds for us in the next X number of years, could be tomorrow morning. I mean, that's serious. My oldest brother died not long ago. He's 81 or so, and literally his wife. He was standing, and she's in the kitchen. She says, "Rena, would you like some tea?" And he said, "No, I don't feel well." And he must have said it in a way that she kind of. And then next thing she looks over, he's dead. Yeah. And I think, yeah, great. For him. Even better if he'd been a clear and luminous kind of human being. And, I think he struggled with that, but so do we all. Whatever happens, it'll be better, for sure. Yeah. And that's, you can say that's faith, but you can also say, I have enough wisdom to observe what I've done with my life so far. And whenever I've applied myself in this kind of way, giving kindness, giving generosity to things in my life, becoming as clear in the present moment as I can. Whenever I've done that, things have been better. Simple. The equation is very simple. It's not rocket science. Is that maybe it? Okay. Very good. Thank you for all your questions and all your attention. That's a gift in itself, Generosity of attention. Thank you. So we have I guess a little bit of chanting at the end. Are we still going to do that?
Yes.